our SMS number, and he will be answering them while he's still in studio. So do that right now because we're almost running out of time. You did mention that a lot of students are going to South Africa, Malaysia, Uganda, of course, America and Europe seem to be very popular destinations as well. Why are there so many Kenyans moving, looking for tertiary education elsewhere when we do have universities here which are chartered and recognized?
Well, a number of things. First of all, I mean, I think, as you've said, we've got high enthusiasm for education. So we value education very much. Parents are willing to invest everything into education. It's the only thing you can pass to your child.
Right.
And I think it's a good sign that Kenyans really value education. So they're going to look for it anywhere they can find it. But, I mean, you've raised 2 points. I mean, parents make rational choices. I mean, they look at the economic rationale for the decisions they make. One, they could say, I mean, how much does it cost for me if my child went to Malaysia compared to if they went to a university locally, private or public? They make the cost calculation and then they say, well, perhaps I'll save a little bit of money. Two, is the global qualification itself. I mean, the exposure they get outside. The point I would raise is that some of the Western universities or in Malaysia, etc., you are in a classroom with students from all over the world. And that itself is a very rich context in terms of what you learn. I would be looking for when Kenya will start attracting students from. One of the reasons why I think most people travel out for education is great opportunities there. Of course, there is always also better quality in many ways. But also, I mean, there is limited supply locally. I mean, that is true. I mean, the number of people who would like to have university education versus the places that are available, and in terms of the choices some of them would like to have, is minimal. And there are also those who are lucky who end up with scholarships outside. And previously also the opportunity to be able to be a student and work at the same time. I mean, that was not very much available in Kenya. We're increasingly with the global economic challenges. I mean, it's not as it used to be before. But the opportunity to be able to be a student and also work at the same time was an attraction to go to Europe as well as to go to the US.
And with that, a lot of people say causes brain drain, something which I know you're saying is brain gain nowadays. But what happens is you go to university elsewhere and then you get this job offer and maybe you're attracted and decide to stay there. Is this happening more and more, or is this reducing? Are people coming back more often?
I think at the higher end it's not reducing. I mean, middle level, yes. I know a lot of people with first bachelor degree, master's degree are coming back. Kenyans, a lot of Kenyans who are highly talented are still outside there. That is for sure true. I mean, the reason they're out there, one is basically the economic incentives that they find, work environment. But a lot of them are passionate about their country. So there is obviously the brain drain. And I'm sure if they're here, they would contribute a lot to the national development. And I mean, the environment should do anything possible to attract the high-end talented Kenyans back to the country. But at the same time, I mean, I use the word brain gain because, you know, the economic statistics does show that remittances are quite big. I mean, Kenyans are sending a lot of money back, and that is helping to cushion the shilling in many ways because of the foreign reserve that brings in. And that is just the channel, official channel. There are also a lot of them who send money to their families, and therefore they uplift them out of poverty because they end up living on more than $2 a day. So the economic return is quite there, up there. I mean, nobody can argue with it. But the question is national benefit. I mean, if all these Kenyans who are talented were back here and helping to drive the national economy, helping to drive the policies in government, and helping evidence to count, and building up on our health system, on our education system, on our infrastructure, on all elements that are supposed to spur economic growth. Obviously, the per capita gain by them being in the country would be something that would be great.
All right. Something you had mentioned earlier is that in Kenya we don't have systems which allow you to transition sort of slowly into university, like community colleges. But there are those who decide, you know, after KCSE, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and it's going to assist me to get to certain and certain place. But the job market is highly competitive, such that you can't be employed unless you have a degree or a master's or a PhD in some cases. Do we allow as a society and as a community in Kenya for those people who did not get into university to succeed?
It's a good point. I mean, is not going to university the end of life? I don't think so. I mean, it should be. The only challenge I think we've got, and somehow I'm glad when I'm in Nairobi and I see a lot of growth in a number of areas, is that you need economic growth for education to be functional. It's a two-way switch. I mean, you need education for your economic growth, but you also need economic growth to be able to have a sustained and good education system. If you have got a larger chunk of your population who are below 24 years old, let's say 60% of your population, or it's a significant chunk who are below 24 years, you won't have the resources to put into the education system because you won't tax them as much. They won't contribute to economic growth. But I mean, the point you're raising is, do all those who do not qualify to university get wasted? Should there be a way in which the education system can help them? I agree with you. I mean, we haven't done enough to expand middle-level colleges for those who don't qualify to universities, and then later on to find mechanisms by which we can actually allow them to proceed. If you look at Open University in the UK, for example, there's no entry qualification. I mean, they don't need any certificate to join Open University. And yet thousands, hundreds of thousands of learners all over the world go through Open University. But you come in, you discuss with the lecturers, and you get your area. So you could have completely failed. But then they rehabilitate you once you've developed the passion. And you can end up being a professor through that system.
Right.
We don't have that system here. And I think in future, in trying to reform our education system, we must not allow for a system that only says, well, if you don't pass with a B or the entry qualification or a C for the university, you're done. No, I mean, we should find a way in which you can go to middle-level college and then proceed to university. But I need to put a caveat. I mean, of course, the challenge now is that we still only have a smaller proportion of people with university degree. I mean, all of them are concentrated in Nairobi. So if you look at the statistics, it might look like all Kenyans are getting a degree. I mean, the reality is not. They're not. In fact, the proportion of Kenyans with a degree are still very few for the level of Vision 2030. Expansion of university degree alone is not the way to go, because it's not going to be sustainable. It's going to be detrimental to quality now because it has to be done gradually. And a university has to have the infrastructure worthy of a university. So the only alternative is to have a large number of middle colleges which can be of good quality, which produce graduates who are relevant to immediate labor market. Within 2 years, you've finished your course, you go to the labor market. But the challenge I would like to raise also is that our economic structure is not industry, agriculture, service. Our manufacturing is not very big. And the manufacturing is where you get a lot of people who don't have university degree going into. I mean, if you look at China, what is driving China is not service sector. It is the manufacturing, this large export-driven manufacturing. And even much of Europe, even the US, before they moved to these service consumerism, which requires high-end level of education, they were manufacturing. So I think one of the things we need to look at in terms of economic growth is to revamp our manufacturing sector, because it will absorb a lot of these people. Also revamp our agricultural sector, because it will absorb a lot of university non-university bound students. Because when everybody goes to university, they tend to end up in service sector. And service sector is where we've grown quite a bit, but it requires high skill.
Right.
And that is the challenge we've got.
All right. And finally, as we wind up this interview very briefly, perhaps you could answer the question on our screens. KCPE, what next? Both from the students' points of view, the parents' points of view, and, of course, government points of view.
What next? KCPE results?
KCSE.
KCSE results. I mean, let's wait and see how they look like. I mean, obviously, there'll be, as if you analyze the trend from the past, a few schools that have always dominated will dominate, and there'll be jubilation for those who succeed. I think what should be actually government's attention is that they should expand opportunities for a lot more people who don't go to universities. And I think, as the minister was saying, the competition between schools is partly healthy, but also not very healthy. I mean, you have to have a way in which you hold the education system to account. And there needs to be an understanding whether, by ranking the learners alone, has that really helped to solve the problem. I think we still don't have an answer. But I think parents should not despair that their child has not gone to university. I mean, there are so many other avenues by which somebody can become productive, successful economically, and have a fulfilling life. But I understand the challenge of parents, because where do you take them? I mean, how many colleges are there? And they're also expensive. I mean, if you take them to these commercial colleges all over Nairobi, they're going to cost you a lot of money. If you're from the village, you've never come to Nairobi, where a lot of students are, how are you going to access these colleges? So I think there is need for a message out there to improve on these middle-level colleges, and then work closely with manufacturing to find a way in which they can be interlinked. Because I think our education system has become quite pyramidal. In some ways, it has expanded quite a bit, but still I think it is catering for a very small minority who manage to go to university, with the rest actually somehow being left out and feeling as if the education system has not fulfilled their dreams. And that is a feeling their parents too have.
Professor Oketch from the African Population and Health Research Center, Senior Research Scientist there. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been a pleasure.